Morning. This webinar offers closed captioning. To enable closed captioning, click on the blue widget or the CC in a box located to the bottom left of the screen. Welcome to the City of Chicago Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection. We have adapted our regular business education workshop webinars at City Hall into these webinars until further notice. Please note any website or email that I mentioned will be posted in the chat below. All BACP offices are open to limited members of the public. Masks are required in all BACP facilities. For those seeking business license assistance, we strongly encourage the processing of license and permits online. Business license can be applied for or renewed online at chicagobusinessdirect.org, or you can call 312-74-GO-BIZ. If you are a part of the BACP Entrepreneur Certificate Program, you can get credit for joining this webinar by sending an email to bacpoutreach@cityofchicago.org. If you want to learn more about this program, please visit chicago.gov/business education. Also, this webinar is being recorded and will be available at youtube.com/Chicago BACP. I will post the mentioned information in the chat box. We encourage attendees to ask questions. Please use the chat box and send your questions to all panelists. There will be a Q&A session at the end of this presentation. Today's webinar is entitled How to Write a Winning Business Plan, What You Need to Know, presented by Rockin Enterprise. At this time, I will now turn this webinar over to Donna for us to begin.
Good morning, everyone. And I am so glad that we solved all the technical difficulties because it was looking grim for a moment. But here we are, and we're going to learn how to write a winning business plan. And I want to point out that a business plan, you're going to need it if you need to get a loan from a bank or any other group, or sometimes you even need it to get a lease because the landlord wants to make sure you're legit. So there's lots of reasons why you need a business plan, and it isn't a one and done. Every 12 to 18 months, you should revisit your business plan and see if you need to update it, because a lot of times your customers will make you change your path, and you need to be aware of this because it might be so subtle that you don't even know that it's happening, but maybe you took on new goods or new services. And so it's a living document, and you should update it at least every 12 to 18 months. So now we're going to look at the next slide. And okay, this is who I am, and my contact information is at the back on the last slide. So a business plan is a written document that clearly defines the goals of a startup or an existing business, and it outlines the methods for achieving these goals. And I want to say, if you're not familiar, and I did send all these handouts, so they will be posted. There is a gentleman, Alexander Osterwalder from Strategizer, and he invented this business model canvas. And the book is The Business Model Generation. And this little template helps you organize your thoughts, and it's a good first step before you sit down to write your business plan. And the book is The Business Model Generation. But get the book. You don't have to buy it. They have it at the Chicago Public Library, but do not get the ebook. If you get the ebook, the first sentence is, this book is better as a book. So I made that mistake because I was getting on a plane and wanted to read it. That's the first sentence. So it's the business model generation, and it's the business model canvas. And this helps organize 9 segments about what you're selling, who your customers are, what your resources are. So it's a very helpful tool for beginning. And writing a business plan, it's you're going to learn what your goals are, and it's a step-by-step process. So what's included? The beginning thing is an executive summary, and then a business description, and a product service description, a marketing plan, an operations and management plan, and finally the financial plan. Now, this might seem counterintuitive, but write the executive summary last. And I sent a template with everybody that has all these questions to ask so that you can sort of organize your thoughts and answer and make a statement that's in a cohesive, well-planned manner. But even though it says start with the executive summary, and it does go in the beginning of your business plan, and it's usually just a page or two, a handful of paragraphs, you want to keep it brief. It goes at the first thing, but you write it last, because it's by the time you've written the rest of the plan, you'll be able to write a much more concise business plan. So it's 1 to 2 paragraphs. And you also summarize your unique selling proposition. And we're going to talk more about this later. But what makes you unique? And sometimes what makes you unique, it's not a new app or a brand new digital thingamabob. Sometimes what makes you unique is you're the first one in the neighborhood, or you're the only one in the neighborhood. I don't care if there's 3,000 dry cleaners in Chicagoland, if they've just recently developed, like where they're developing homes where Finkel and Sons was. If there's no nearby drugstore, if there's no nearby dry cleaners, if there's no nearby pet store or doggy daycare, sometimes just being the first one in the neighborhood is what makes you unique. And in this summary, you describe your product or service description. They're interchangeable, whether you're selling a product or you have a service business. Your target market description, and these are going to be your heaviest users, and your overall goals and objectives for your business. So that's what goes in the executive summary. Then the business description is you describe in detail the business. You include the business's name and location. And you might not have the location yet, so you can just say like the area, if it's going to be in the Lincoln Park area or the Pilsen area, or any of the other neighborhoods, Boys Town, etc. So you just put in the neighborhood, and if you don't have a specific address, and don't be so anxious to get a location. There is always another good location. And then you describe the legal structure of your business, and that's if you're a sole proprietor, a simple partnership, an LLC, a corporation, what makes your business unique. And it could be something new and exciting, or it could be, like I said, you're just first in the neighborhood, and then describe why your business will succeed. And one of the things I want to point out too is you can turn a hobby into a business. So say you're recently retired, but while you were raising your kids, you were always the baseball little league coach. If you want to start a business as a camp to coach young boys and girls on how to play baseball, that can be turned into a business. So it doesn't mean necessarily that you're were a CPA and you work for a big accounting firm and now you're going to go out on your own. Sometimes it can be just a hobby that turned into something that can be a viable professional business. In your product service description, what is your product or service? Summarize the key technology, the key concept, or the strategy on which your business is based. And what features and benefits does your product and service have? And when you talk about features and benefits, you really want to talk about FAB. So write this down. FAB stands for feature, advantage, and benefit. So if you were talking about a tile mate, I don't know if you know what a tile mate is. It's that little thingamabob that you attach to a key, your keychain, so that if you can't find your keys, you can look on your phone and either make it send out a beeping noise, or if you really lost it in your house and you can't hear the beeping noise, you can track your steps. Like maybe you left it in the car and it'll show you that it's in the garage. So what key technology or concept. And like I said, sometimes the concept just is there's none in the neighborhood. And then what features and benefits. But you want to describe what's in it for the customer. So it's feature, advantage, and benefit. How does your product or service solve or satisfy your customer unique needs uniquely? And in this, it's really what problem are you solving? And the bigger the problem, the more customers you're likely to have. And that's why some of these apps have become so monumental, because everybody had the problem. And so, or inventing cameras and putting them in phones, everybody had the problem. So how does your product or service uniquely satisfy the problem? And the bigger the problem, the better the business. And as we certainly saw during the pandemic, not having sufficient daycare locations really put a crimp on working people, because somebody had to stay home and watch the kids while school was closed. So opening up a daycare is very challenging, and there's a lot of rules and regulations. If you need to open up a daycare center or you're thinking about it, go to the Women's Business Development Center, because they truly are experts in the city. And then describe why a customer would buy for your business. And it could be your hours of operation, your convenient location, that you're in a strip mall and you have convenient parking. Don't underestimate the value of having parking. And a lot of times you can work with your alderman and get one of those cutouts in the street that say 20 minutes parking available with flashing lights. So, but parking can be a big reason why your business is successful. And develop a marketing plan. You define in detail who is your target market. And when somebody would tell me, I still do a lot of consulting for entrepreneurs. When somebody says, oh, everybody can use my product. No. I want to know who will be your heaviest users. Because your heaviest users, depending on the size of the market, that can spell success for your business. You know, you could make the best buggy whip in America, perhaps the world, but if they don't sell that many buggy whips annually, you don't have much of a business. So you want to know your heaviest users. The other things you want to know is who the buyer is, and is it the same as the users? Because if you think of all the products that infants and babies and young children use, they're not the buyer. They may influence the buyer when they're older, say as far as kiddie cereals, Tricks and Kicks and Rice Krispies and Count Chocula or whatever, but mom has to, or dad has to decide to put it in the grocery cart and pay for it. And there was a big lawsuit on this because baby food, they used to add so much salt in baby food that it was actually harmful for the baby, because they knew that mom popped the seal on the baby food and she licked the lid to see if it had any kind of good taste. She didn't want to give it to Junior if it tasted terrible, but they were putting in enough salt for an adult's palate and not a baby. So do think about who your target audience is. And you want your heaviest users, your secondary users or buyers, and your tertiary buyers or users. So think about those groups, because when you think about makeup, yes, most women start wearing makeup at 14, 15, and many women wear it probably till the day they're in hospice, but they're not heavier users, where young women, probably 15 to 25, are the heaviest users, or 18 to 25, and then 26 to 35 and 36. You know, so think about your target market. Also analyze your direct competitors and your indirect competitors. And a direct competitor, if I say Coca-Cola, a direct competitor is Pepsi, obviously, or Royal Crown, or But an indirect or alternative competitor are 7-Up, ginger ale, orange crush, all those Mountain Dew, all those flavored waters now, iced tea. Iced tea coming in bottles is not that many years out on the market. It used to be you wanted iced tea, you brewed it in your house, you stuck it in the refrigerator, you had iced tea. So you have to think about your alternative competitors too. And then what is the positioning of your product? And is your product good, better, or best? And sometimes you can create the feeling that it's the best by your marketing campaign or by your marketing strategy. Because honestly, cars that cost $70,000 and $80,000, I'm not sure they're worth it, but they have the cachet of driving a Mercedes or a Lexus, that they're somehow special because they're so expensive. And I'm sure the profit margin on those cars are way better than on driving a simple Chevy or a Ford. So that's the positioning of your product. And I do want to say, I posted and gave to BACP a competitive analysis. And the way the competitive analysis works, it'll be posted later, is you put your company in the upper left-hand corner, and then you name 4 or 5 of your biggest competitors, your most likely competitors. And then you name across the horizontal axis features that you either have or you don't have, or that, make you stand out from the competition. Ideally, you can click all the boxes. And you see those a lot of times when you buy on certain websites. Like if you go to the ABT appliance website, you can look at 3 different washers and they'll tell you how many different settings they have, or do they have time drying? Do they have, bulky loads, etc. And they compare features. So that's what you're doing, but you're putting your company against the opposing competition. So define the product packaging. And this can be very, very important because sometimes packaging makes the product. Think about Tide Pods. They were such a success that then they came out with pods for dishwashers. And then when pods were so successful, but they looked like candy to young children, I just read an article about it. Tide had to make their pods the same effective formula, but they had to add a bitter tasting agent to them. So if kids ate them, they would spit them out. And they also put in a safety cap that was okay for mom or an adult to open, but too challenging for a child to open. So packaging can really make the product. Think about Campbell's Cup of Soup, or also all those microwavable single serve macaroni and cheese, or microwavable hearty soups, etc. Packaging has a big influence on its portability. And just so you know, think about the milk chug. The milk chug was developed by Dean's, a Chicago company, dairy company, and it made milk in a small bottle that fit the cup holder of a car's cup, because milk was losing out because it always came in those little wax boxes. Like sometimes now cream still comes in, or heavy cream, whipping cream. But they invented the milk chug because moms weren't buying them because they didn't fit in that little round circle in their car. And moms have to, take the kids to basketball practice and baseball practice and music lessons and ballet lessons. So packaging has a huge influence. And also sometimes you are the package. Think about how some of the big box stores, Target stores make all the help-wear red shirts. And Best Buy makes everybody wear a blue shirt so you can find who's the customer and who's the employee, so you can get help. So it's And sometimes you're the package when you are a salesperson. If you are a real estate agent, you sort of dress to the nines, because when you go and meet Mr. and Mrs. Homebuyer, you want to convince them by the car you drive, by the clothes you wear, that you are the most successful real estate agent in Chicagoland, and you will help them find their dream home. So sometimes you are the packaging. And where will your business be located? And is the right location critical? Often the location isn't critical at all. I mean, I have to be honest, I always worked out of my house because I would always go to the client and nobody ever came to see me. And so it didn't matter that I worked out of my home. But sometimes having good street traffic is really important and makes the difference between success and failure. This is a slide to show about location, location, location. And in, see the little A arrow? That is a Dunkin' Donuts. And it happens to be at Eola is the vertical street, and the horizontal street is North Aurora Road. This is in Aurora. And that's one of the busiest Dunkin' Donuts in the area because of just where it is with regard to traffic patterns in the morning. And so they're very successful because people get them if they turn right onto Eola, or if they're coming down Eola, so it's very, very popular. But this next one where you see the little A, that is the back of an industrial strip mall. So the side that's closer to the street, that's an industrial strip mall, but this is even a worse location because it's on the back, and it was a retail clothing store. So they died an incredibly quick death because nobody could find them and they didn't provoke any street traffic. So sometimes location, location, location really does matter. And that's why I said when we first started, never let a real estate agent or a landlord scare you into signing a lease too quickly, because there is always another location. And be very, very, wary of going into a restaurant that was an old restaurant that failed, because we all have seen them. There's some locations where they've been 20 different restaurants and they all failed. So why is that? They couldn't all serve crummy food. Maybe it's because there wasn't enough parking, or maybe it's because it was a terrible intersection and it needed a stoplight and it didn't have one. Or maybe it's near a school and they couldn't get a liquor license, or a church. So really think about where you're going to put your business, but you do have to include where it is located. And usually when you're writing in your business plan, you say the pluses of why the location that you've chosen, that you're in a strip mall and it's near a post office and a grocery store, or you're in a strip mall that has ample parking and it's got security guards and it's well lit and it's open a lot of hours. So you can stay open a lot of hours, because a lot of times when you go into a real mall or a strip mall, there are rules about operating that you have to comply with to be in that space. So don't sign a lease without having an attorney look at it. In your marketing plan, how will you price your product or service? That's where we talked about good, better, best. How will your price compare to the direct and indirect competitors? And will you be profitable at your chosen price? So let's talk a little bit more about this. I don't mind if you're on par with your competition within pennies, where somebody would say, oh, this sells at $9.99 and the other store's at $9.95. Nobody's going to go buy something else for 4 cents. And I don't mind you being higher than the competition, because you you say based on service and customer assistance and ease of, hours of operation and convenient parking, you charge more, or you have the cachet of being the Lexus or the Cadillac or whatever, the Audi. But I don't want you to be the cheapest one in the neighborhood, because if you're the lowest price, and then it's one thing to have a price guarantee, that's different. But you don't want to be the lowest price and advertise that you have the lowest prices, because at some point your competition lowers price, and then you lower price, and then nobody's making money, and you'll both be out of business before you can say J.K. Robinson. So no, do not be. It's my personal opinion, but really I've never seen it work out well. You can have a loss leader. Now, a loss leader is different. A loss leader is when you give something away for a ridiculous price, and sometimes you have to spend a certain amount to get it. That's when breads, are 59 cents with the $10 purchase, or you get a turkey for 88 cents a pound with the $25 purchase. So that's a loss leader. That's a different animal. That's just a hook to get them in the store, but then you're making the money on the stuffing, the cranberries, the sweet potatoes, etc. So the wine. So that's different. It's just a hook to get them in the door. But you want to really make sure you are profitable at your chosen price. Now, to make sure you're profitable at your chosen price, I've given you a break-even Excel template, and we'll talk more about cash flow in a minute. But the first thing you want to do is make sure, and you can be in the negative. You can lose money when you're first opening a business the first several months. And honestly, even if you're going for a loan, you are better off showing a banker that, yeah, we lose money for the first 5 months of operation, but then when we're established ourselves in the neighborhood, or we've done enough advertising and people start buying, then we start making money. First, we get to break even, and break even is where your total costs equal your total expenses. You're not making money, but you're not bleeding cash. And that's very important to get to. And you also want to do your break-even analysis for different months. We'll talk more about this in a minute, but almost all businesses and product companies have a seasonality component linked to them. And I know it's hard to believe, but the Halloween candy that we are buying now to give to little trick-or-treaters or eat ourselves, that candy was made about 6 months ago, or more, because now candy has a huge shelf life. Thank God. It's usually good for over a year. But the only reason you have to make it 6 months in advance, because otherwise it won't be at the stores right after Labor Day. You ever notice that? Labor Day, everybody's at a swimming pool or the beach or a barbecue, and the next day they're selling Halloween candy and treats. So you have to account for seasonality. So when you do your break-even analysis, there will be months where you're making a lot of products, but you're not selling them yet because you're not shipping them like candy for Halloween. So you might have a great production month, but a lousy sales month. So you have to take that in so you can really look at your expenses, and maybe you need part-time employees during the busiest seasons, and then you can lay them off more easily when you're going to your slow season. And then how will you promote or advertise your product or service? And this is, will you use mass marketing or will you use targeted marketing? Now, when you use targeted marketing, think of the WeatherTech people with the floor mats, and now they have all those other products. They really only used WBBM 780 or 105.9 drive time, because that's when you were in your car, when you were slogging through the slush and the snow and the sleet and the rain. And then they started using billboards, but they really use stuff that you read when you're in your car or you hear when you're in your car. So a limited, it's not a national campaign. I mean, maybe now they do a national campaign. Obviously, I live in Illinois, so I only hear what's going on in Chicago. But mass media is when you buy an ad in a magazine that's got a national footprint, or you do billboards in many, many states because you sell, like Applebee's does, or TGIF, Fridays, where they have lots of stores in lots of states, in lots of cities. So you might need a national campaign. But if you're the local shop owner, like if you're the Goodyear store or the Firestone store, you might just advertise locally, because people are only going to travel so far to get their tires changed or their brakes relined. So think about what you're going to use. And targeted media are more like direct mail, local radio, local newspaper. You can buy a section of the newspaper too. If you're only on the north side, you can buy a run of the Tribune or the Times. You can buy a section. Valpacks, and you don't see Valpacks now that so many people, because of the pandemic, because the Valpacks used to advertise a lot of local restaurants, but restaurants were so hard hit by the pandemic. And then you can also buy regional sections of magazines, and you can use newsletters, Facebook. Facebook has been incredibly successful for our own local Lou Malnati's pizza family. They have such a following on Facebook that they actually switched, and it's the only place they advertise their jobs, in case you want to work for a Lou Malnati's. And then there's Google AdWords, and it's a whole nother lecture, but that's the way that you come up first when you are doing a Google search, because they have found how powerful it is that you're in the car and you're looking at a restaurant and you want to see, what hours are it's open and where's it exactly located, because you have a vague idea that it's in Andersonville, but you don't know, is it on Clark Street? Is it on Broadway? So, Google AdWords can be incredibly successful, but they did go up in price. Developing a marketing plan, you answer the physical distribution questions. Where will your customers expect to find your product or service? And so that's like, if you're soda pop, where will you expect to find your product or service? And if you're Coke, I don't think you're ever more than 300 feet away from a Coke or a Pepsi, because they're sold in supermarkets, they're sold at the checkout counter, they're at drugstores, they're at hospital, waiting rooms, they're in student lounges, they're in train stations, they're in L stations, they're everywhere. So, those kiosks to buy a can of Coke. So gas stations, I don't think you're ever, 7-Eleven, I don't think you're ever more than 300 yards away personally from a Coca-Cola. And then how will you, because you want to be where your customers expect to find you. That's why, in case you don't know this, when you're at the checkout counter of a grocery store or a drugstore or a mass merchandiser, when you are a company, you have to pay, it's called slotting fees. And you pay extra fees to be near the checkout counter, because they know there's a lot of impulse purchases for the candy and the gums and the magazines, etc. So you actually pay the store that's going to sell your product an extra fee for having a good location. You also pay a slotting fee just to get into a grocery store, because they have to add your UPC number to their store's sales system. How will you get your products distributed? And that's how you're going to use wholesale distribution. That's where you sell to wholesalers, and they have sales reps that call on the retailers. And most food and health and beauty aid products do sell to wholesalers. And then the grocery stores and the drug chains buy from the wholesalers. Or sometimes it's direct to the store. Home appliances, TVs, washers, dryers, those types of things, humidifiers, air conditioners, used to be sold through wholesalers, and the wholesalers sold to retailers. But retailers got so big with the Walmarts and the Best Buys and the ABTs that now those types of manufacturers sell directly to the retail distribution center. And then who do you know who your suppliers will be? And so make sure you have multiple suppliers for the raw materials that you need to make your products, because the time will come, and we've seen it during the pandemic, when your key supplier is unavailable. So you better have backup. And sometimes it's not as ridiculous as having a once in 100-year pandemic. Sometimes it's that your favorite supplier had a fire, and then when the sprinklers went off, they saved the building, but they ruined all the merchandise or a bulk of the merchandise. Or sometimes that supplier, his workers are on strike, and so you can't get chicken from Purdue. You have to buy it from Pilgrim's Pride or somebody. So trust me, have multiple suppliers. It's safer for your business. Resource requirements, think about and include in your plan. Technology requirements, what equipment, software, internet connectivity, are all your employees going to have tablets? Do you ever notice now how a lot of restaurants, the waitress or waiter takes your order on an iPad? So sometimes you place your own order on an iPad. Personnel requirements. Do you need part-time, full-time, contract, background checks, bonding? When is somebody really a contractor? This is very important. A contractor is a 1099 person who controls their own destiny. Typically, you think it's a contractor as the cleaning service that cleans the retail location, or the accountant you use, or the lawyer you use. Be very careful about trying to pass off employees as 1099 contractors. And there's a whole test you can give. And the test is, you can Google IRS 1099, because it's really based on behavioral control, financial, the type of relationship, and the key aspect of how they support your business. And if they're supporting your business like the way a lawyer does, or an accountant, or the cleaning service, it's pretty clear cut that they're a contractor. But when you try to pass off part-time employees or employees as contractors, it gets very dangerous, and the Department of Labor can come after you and sue you and collect all the back taxes. So be very careful. The resource requirements. What other resources do you need? Do you need leave behinds? Do you need a physical office or business space? Do you not? There are rules in Chicagoland that if you have a handyman repair business, you can't work out of your own garage, because it disturbs the neighbors. If you're trying to assign your employees, you go to Mrs. Brown, you go to Mrs. Green, she has a leaky faucet, Mrs. Brown has a backed up toilet. You need to actually rent one of those storage spaces that's a commercial space, so that you can keep the tools and equipment there, even though most contractors move the equipment from Mrs. Brown to Mrs. Green but it's a rule. I don't make up the rules. You just have to live by them, so that you operate a legal business in Chicago. External and leave behinds are, leave behind can be as simple as when you are a handyman and you leave a magnet on the washer, so the next time the dryer conks out, the homeowner knows who to call, that it's, quick fix handyman. So that can be a leave behind, or a brochure. External requirements. Do you need an accountant, a lawyer, a bookkeeper, a cleaning service, a garbage pickup? If you're a restaurant, do you need to hire, somebody to pick up the trash? Other resource requirements, cloud computing. Do you need to use your Intuit software, your QuickBooks in the cloud? Do you have Microsoft Office? Do you need Grasshopper? Grasshopper is just one of those services where if a client calls you at the office and you're not there, it seamlessly looks for you on your cell phone, or then even your house phone. After all, the customer doesn't know that you're at home already. So that's what a grasshopper.com does. Regis offices are those offices that you rent just space. They're usually a little more private than like WeWork or 1871. Do you need iPads or smartphones for your company? Do you need a website where you need to purchase a web name from GoDaddy or Namecheap or any of those other services? Vistaprint is a great company, vistaprint.com, for buying affordable business cards, stationery, invoices, brochures, postcards for direct mail to get your customers to come into your store. And Google My Business is absolutely free. Google My Business is where you fill out a form, just Google My Business, and you get to register your business. That's how you find out when you go to look at your favorite restaurant and it says closing soon, because they've already listed that their hours are from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. and the days they're open. So it's a free service by Google because Google wants to know where the heck you are. But you do want to take advantage of it because there are yellow pages, but who uses them these days? Okay, operations management. This is who will be in charge of your business. Will you hire somebody to be like a foreman or day-to-day operations, a manager, assistant manager? What special qualifications or expertise do you have to run the business? And this is where I said that very often you can turn a hobby into a business. You know, you always loved to crochet and knit while you were working. It was your way to de-stress, and now you want to open up a little yarn shop in your neighborhood or give knitting and crocheting lessons, or sewing lessons, anything, or like I said, little league baseball lessons. So what expert qualifications do you have to run the business? Because a bank, before they give you a loan, wants to know that you have experience to be successful at your new business. And when will you need to hire employees? Because very often you start the business with friends and family. This is important. If you need your teenage kids to help you develop your website, because there's software that they can do to help you design a simple website. And sometimes you just need one with hours of operation, a menu posted, you know, call in your order. You don't need something really, really exotic like Amazon, etc. People who bought this also like that. Sometimes you just need a simple site. And your teenage or college age kids can probably help you tremendously, in which case pay them a salary, because the salary is tax deductible. Allowances are not. And there's special rules where it's not considered kiddie child labor that you're abusing them if they are younger than 16 helping you. So you have to check out those rules. But when they're family members, it's a little more lenient. But you do need to know when to hire employees, and that should be in your operations and management plan. Also, what salaries will you pay? And what training will you or your employees require? You know, just even if you have a retail business, if you have a point of sales cash register, those can be daunting, really. I used to use one once in a while, and honestly, I was terrible at it because I didn't use it daily, and I could never remember the exact sequence of things of how to use it. So you might need training just on things as not just customer service, greeting the customer, helping them find the merchandise, but how to ring up the sale. And also how to problem solve if you're out of what the customer needs, and recommend an alternative product that will do the trick. Will you give drug tests, check backgrounds, or bond employees? And make sure to, when you hire, that you're familiar with Title VII, which are the laws that tell you what you can't ask on a job interview because it's not germane to doing the job. You can ask an employee, can you lift 50 pounds because it's part of the job? But you can't ask them, can they lift 50 pounds because they're pregnant and 50 pounds might be too much for them to lift. You cannot ask anything, and there's all sorts of rules and guidelines for, you can't ask about age or genetic information or birthplace or country of origin or citizenship or disabilities or gender or sexual orientation or marital status or family or pregnancy or race or color or ethnicity or religious or home ownership, bankruptcy, or if their wages have ever been garnished. Now you can ask them about their credit score and do a credit check under certain conditions. And you'd have to read up on those, but it's basically if they're going to handle money or have access to top secrets of the business. There are a few rules where you can do it, because obviously if they've declared bankruptcy and they're going to be handling thousands of dollars worth of cash every day, if they work in a grocery store, you might want to know their credit history. But be careful, because there are only several loopholes that you can use it for. Who will manage the business's daily and long-term finances? Do you need a bookkeeper? Do you need an accountant? How will you process and record sales? Do you need QuickBooks? Do you need just a regular invoice register? And how does your business have special local or federal regulations? And if you're a car mechanic, there are all sorts of ones, how you dispose of oil and other car parts and metal and this and that. And if you're restaurants, so many of them are going to paper straws because they're more ecologically correct. So it might not be a real law, but if you don't want to tick off your ecologically correct customers, you want to switch to bamboo or paper straws, which honestly, growing up, there was paper straws. You can't see me, but I wasn't born yesterday. Also, sales tax. If you are a car mechanic, you can charge sales tax on the parts you resell, the tires, the pipes, the filters, etc. But you don't charge sales tax in Illinois, not yet, although they're looking to try to change it, on the labor hours to put the parts into the car or to diagnose the problem. So typically lawyers, accountants, the service portion of a mechanic, repair people, they only charge you sales tax on the parts, not the labor. So that's a special regulation. And will you also need to learn how to write a statement of work? A statement of work is if you do business usually, or a project proposal, if you do government contracts. So you might need to hire somebody who really knows how to write a compelling government contract. And then, like I said, you might need a point of sale system, one of those electronic systems that backs into your inventory systems that relieves the inventory depending on the business that you're starting. Who will be in charge of the inventory and inventory control measures? Do you have those little stickers on it where they have to pass it over something so it doesn't ring when you walk out the doors? Are you going to have to make employees carry clear purses in the store so that you can see what's inside them, etc. So you really have to think about inventory and inventory control, because a lot of inventory can walk out the door. Loss prevention policies, what do you have in place? And, you don't want to lose a life over it. But I was recently in a CVS, and the woman told the manager when he walked in, his backpack was flat. And when he left, the backpack was packed, jam-packed with stuff. So obviously the young man was stealing, but nobody wanted to take a bullet for it. So they let him walk out the door. But you don't want to lose all your inventory either. Operations management, avoid some big mistakes. choosing the correct type of entity. Now, when a lot of people start and they're small, they're a simple sole proprietor or simple partnership. But if you choose that and something goes really south, I don't recommend it for restaurants because people can go after your personal assets with a simple partnership or a simple sole proprietor. If you have a partnership or an LLC, you really want to use a partnership agreement. And in the agreement, you want to make sure that you use a third party, especially if you're 50-50 owners, to settle disagreements because you both have 50-50 votes. You want to make sure that you have a buy-sell arrangement in the partnership agreement. So while the honeymoon is still on and you love your partner, because your partner can be a spouse, it can be your best childhood friend, it can be a cousin, a sister, a brother. You want to spell out how to buy each other out while there's no animosity between you. Because the time might come where a partner gets sick and the other one wants to retire. And so you need to know how to settle up, how to buy out the partner who wants to retire. Or the partner might drop dead and you loved the partner till the day he or she died, but you don't like the partner's spouse. So you want to have a way to buy the partner's estate out of the business. So really think about a good partnership agreement with a buy-sell agreement. Use a third party for arbitration. You also have to think about what insurances you need when you start the business. You would need general liability when you put the key in the door. Workman's comp, not till you hire your first employees. Errors and omissions, depending on what your business is. If you're an architect, if you're a lawyer, if you're an accountant, there's special things. If you're a doctor, malpractice. So there's all errors and omissions is sort of like the malpractice for lawyers and accountants and architects. And then key employee insurance is when you're really making money down the road, and it insures the rainmakers so that if one of them dies, if you're in charge of sales and your partner's in charge of back office operations and keeping track of the sales and executing the work product, but you're the rainmaker, you get all the customers, you might want a key employee so that if something happens where you're disabled or you're untimely death, they get enough money that they can hire a contractor to keep the business open and pay a headhunter to hire your replacement. It's grim, but you want to think about it if the business is really making money. And then another big mistake is underestimating costs. And I left one thing off, underestimating startup time, because it takes way longer and way more money. The sales cycle is way longer than you anticipate. So those are some of the biggest mistakes. We talked about the break even, and I gave that template to BACP. There's also the monthly cash flow. And the monthly cash flow, because of seasonality and your sales will be dependent on, certain times a year. A monthly cash flow shows all your expenses for the month and all your sales for the month. And then depending on how the year goes, because you might not have a calendar year, depending on what businesses you might, because there might be a big sales season in the summer. So you want to close your books at the beginning of, or the end of September, or you might have a big sales season. Home electronics, they all end, and smartphones and all electronics, they sort of end at the end of March or the end of April, because they know that people get their income tax refunds and they buy appliances and digital equipment. So that's why their year ends after tax refund time. So you want to see your monthly cash flow, and I have given them an Excel spreadsheet with all of those. So, and I recommend that both with the break even and the cash flow, save those as your master templates, and then do your version 1, version 2, version 3. But save the master templates and don't write anything in them, so that if you screw up the formula, you can look at the original and correct it. And then your estimated your initial year of sales. You want to be conservative, but not so conservative that a bank says, Well, why the heck are you going to business if you're only going to earn 10,000? You know, so be careful with how conservative you are, but don't be so, don't bolster it up so much that it's not realistic. Does your business have seasonality issues? Most companies do. By the way, even if you are a gardener, a lawn service landscaper, there are 5 seasons. And if you think there's only 4, I'll tell you what the 5th one is. They are winter with snow, spring with planting and starting to get the yard ready, summer with grass cutting and trimming, fall with leaf raking, and the 5th season is putting up Christmas decorations or holiday decorations and taking them down. Because if there's not a lot of snow and it can be a slow season, you can help people who, don't have the wherewithal to crawl on their roof, or, the strength, as you get older, you might still be able to live in your own home, but you can't really decorate anymore, but you want the house beautiful when the kids and the grandkids come. So that's the 5th season, is decorating for the holidays. And it's great for decorating for businesses and then tearing it down come January. Financial planning. What are your personal finances for the month? And do you know what they are? So make sure you know what your expenses are. Do you have a nest egg, and I strongly recommend a working spouse or a significant other who maybe has insurance and covers you? How much money can you invest? And is there financial support from friends and family? Be very careful about taking money from friends and family, because if you think Thanksgiving has a lot of tension now, you ain't seen nothing yet. It's a good way to lose your friends and have your family hate you. So I'd rather see you go to a bank or do bootstrapping and grow as the business makes money. Do you have collateral for a traditional lending source? Can you financing terms from your vendors? That's where usually it's 2%, 10, net 30, which means you get a 2% discount if you pay in 10 days, or you pay the full amount in 30. But ask your vendors if you can't pay in 60 or 90 days when you first start, because sometimes they will let you, and then you're sort of using their cash to make sales. And can you get a co-signer for a loan? Be very careful with this as well. Do you know your current credit score? Very many credit cards nowadays, Chase, Citibank, Bank of America, they all have one color card or type of card that shows you a FICO credit score. But this number and that email web address is where you can get your free TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax credit reports. And I strongly recommend that you get one every 4 months so that you can see what's going on, so that banks, what the bank's going to see before the bank sees it. Also, it's very good. And because really banks base loans on how good your credit is, because it's the best predictor that you'll repay. So if you always pay on time and you have no outstanding debts, they're going to think you're a good credit risk, and you probably are. And you also include in your business plan how the loan proceeds will be applied. So will you use it for raw materials, for salaries for employees? Are you going to buy equipment that you need? So you want to use a source in the application of funds. You're borrowing $75,000 and how you're going to apply that $75,000. You want goals that are SMART goals. We've heard this before. They're smart, they're measurable, they're achievable, they're realistic, and they are time related. So include in your business plan 1-year goal and 3-year goals. And they could be that you're going to have sales of $10,000 a month by the time of your 12th month, or you're going to have a certain percent of market share in the neighborhood, because you can get very specific information depending on what you're trying to buy, or your revenue and profitability objectives. By the end of our 12th month, we'll have a profit margin of 42%, so etc. So those are SMART goals. And this is me. Oh, and I finished just about on time. I'm 2 minutes late, but forgive me. All right, now we'll take questions. Angela, you're muted. The name of the book I recommended at the beginning of my presentation, I will tell you, it's The Business Model Generation. Business Model Generation. And the book is by Alexander Osterweiler. I will type this in, Alexander, because it's a mouthful. You know, it's a foreign name, Alexander Osterwalder.
Hi, this is Angela. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I have a question. I heard you were saying that you sent the templates to someone.
Yes.
Did you? I don't know if you sent it to the 46 attendees
I
separately.
sent it to the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection. So I think they post them after the lecture. Well, can somebody from BACP, Stella, or somebody answer that? Maybe they're on another call, but they
Yeah.
usually post them afterwards.
Okay,
Or they
that'd be
send them
great.
to you after the call.
Since I
Okay,
posted,
it's already posted.
it's not posted yet. Which one are you looking for?
The templates. Miss Rockin indicated that she had
Email to you after the webinar.
after the webinar. Okay, thank
Yeah.
you so much. And then one more question. Do you have a paid service to help complete the business plan if we wanted to go that route?
I do, but I never recommend it. I'll
Oh,
tell you
okay.
what, you are much better writing it, because there is a template also that I gave to the Department of Business Affairs that asks, there's probably 200 questions. And if you answer the questions in complete sentences, you wind up with the business plan. And it is much better if you write it, because then you really understand your business. You know, it is your baby and dream, not mine. The other thing I want, so after you write it, okay, you use my template, you answer the 200 questions. And the questions are, what's the name of your business? And you answer, the name of my business is Rockin Enterprises, and it says where it's located. It's located at 201 Main Street, Chicago, Illinois, 60611. And then you just answer the questions. And so then when it's all written, take your business plan and Google Illinois Small Business Development Centers. I'll type it in the thing so everybody, Illinois small business development centers. Okay, so I just posted that. Hopefully you can see it. And so you Google that and you will find a small business development center that will review your business plan for free. You are starting out. I want to save you money. So take advantage of this free. So it's totally free. They're all trained professionals. They work with the Department of Business Affairs, but that's a much better bet. That's in your better interest. Any other questions?
Yes.
Okay, what are they?
They're typing them in a box.
Oh, all right. You know, I don't see much of the box. It's small, so I have to look
Very
and
small.
see.
I would love to unmute you guys. If you could raise your hand so I can unmute you, that way you can ask your own questions. I believe you have to request the unmuting.
Yeah, I don't know where this is. They've changed the software slightly, which is why we had so much trouble this morning.
You can just go ahead and put your question in the chat box and I can just read it to her.
Oh, there, you know where it is? It's the raise the hand. It's the little smiley face with the plus sign. If you have there's a hand you can raise, but that's where it is. I just found it. It's on the bottom, it is on a Google type of product, an Android, not a Mac. And there's a little smiley face with a plus, and there's a hand there.
Okay, go ahead. Oh, came loose. He was ready, but then he wasn't. It won't unmute you, Anton. Okay, wait. There we go. It keeps muting you. Okay, go ahead.
Is that better?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, no, I was just basically telling people who had the iPhone, if you press those three dots in the middle, there's a hand raising option next to these emojis. That's how you raise your hand if you're utilizing iPhone.
Thank you.
No problem.
Donna, they have questions like there's a person, her last name is Soy. There you go. I see you. Go ahead with your question.
Yeah, thank you, Donna. I think this is a very interesting program. Thanks to the organizers again. I want to know, how do you open up a business, for instance, a seasonal business, and it's owned by yourself and your wife, or by me and my wife, and how do we now employ ourselves? What's the benefit at the end of the tax year?
Oh, what's the benefit at the end of the tax year? Okay. Hopefully there's nobody from the IRS on the call. So first of all, if you and your wife have a seasonal business, even if you go to like flea markets and you rent a stall and you sell handmade little things. So first of all, you'll get income from the sales, assuming that the sale of the item gives you a decent profit. And then you can pay yourself money too, so you get it, income that way. But you can, so if you have a successful business, you make money that way. You still have to pay a self-employment tax because you'd be a simple sole, partnership. And you'd have to pay taxes on your income, because when you have a simple partnership, the money from the sales floats directly from you. So say you sell $10,000 worth of handmade pot holders, and your expenses, not counting your effort and whatever, the raw materials, etc., are $2,500. That $7,500 in profits will immediately be transferred as if it were a W-2. It's a different form number, but that money is considered your simple income, and you have to pay taxes on it. But I'd rather pay taxes on an extra $7,500 that I earn than not have the even if you're in the 30% bracket and you pay $2,300, somewhere around there, you'd still be, $5,000 ahead. It's a good deal. So that's the benefit. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And sorry, if you are not the one producing those maybe woven crafts, maybe you buy them and you are selling them at a certain price.
It's okay, as long as you're making money. You can buy them for $0.25 and sell them for $1. As long as you're making, good profits on it, it makes sense.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And I saw somebody says, what's the length of the business plan? Make it as long as you need it to be, but it doesn't have to be some crazy, obnoxious length, because nobody reads those really long ones. So, I mean, it's sad but true. They'll read the executive summary and then they'll just want to pull their hair out. So, they might be 8 pages, 12 pages. You might have attachments of products, of pictures that you're doing, or diagrams, etc. So just make it as long as it needs to be, but it doesn't have to be overly lengthy with just nonsense saying the same thing over and over again. All right. I'm trying to, I only see a small box, so I'm going through who's asking what. Oh, I don't, this is a question for Stella. Do you have to live in Chicago to belong to the certificate program? Or can you live in a suburb?
No, you do not.
Okay, so that question's answered. So I think I answered everything that was asked. And in case you didn't hear the answer, all the templates are sent out after this lecture. And like I said, hire your teenage kids, because salary is deductible, allowance is not. They're probably better on the computer than you are.
I don't see any more questions. I don't see any more hands raised. So I would like to thank you, Donna, for your presentation. It was very informative. I hope our attendees get all of the important information that they were looking for out of today's webinar. This webinar will be posted to the Chicago BACP YouTube page. So again, our YouTube page is Chicago BACP. To learn more about our upcoming webinars, please visit chicago.gov/business education. To receive credit for today's webinar or to join our certificate program, please send an email to bacpoutreach@cityofchicago.org. Again, that's bacpoutreach@cityofchicago.org. Donna, any last thoughts?
It's been my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, everyone. Have a safe weekend. And look like it's time to get out the winter coats. It's a little cold outside.
Definitely. Bye-bye all.